It's September the 14th, 2021, and you know why you're here, so let's kick this off right and introduce the players. Hey, I am Gerissar, a PvP Padawan.
Hey everyone, I'm Andallyn.
Hey, I'm Bigmoran.
All right, we did
SeaneyDH.
it. Working out the new intro there, yeah.
We did, and unfortunately, we just missed out the guest. The guest, you talked over top of him, Andallyn. How could you?
I was just so excited, man. I'm so sorry. Big, tell us who we got today.
So we got SeaneyDH. He plays, well, you guessed it, Demon Hunter. And he's been doing really well in Arena. He's been part of the RBG community for a while. And yeah, really good player. Streams on Twitch. So be sure to check that out. I'm sure he's going to plug his link later. But Seaney, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Maybe some things that we might have missed.
Sure, you're right. I've been doing RBGs lately, and I also play High Rated Arena on my stream. I guess I started RBGing in BFA Season 4, and I started playing Demon Hunter in Arena in BFA Season 2. So that's basically what I like to do.
Nice. What's your favorite BG then?
My favorite BG is definitely Temple, and my chat always memes me that we always get Temple. For some reason, I seem to play that map more than others.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it's well suited for Demon Hunters though to play on that.
Yeah, I think that map does well for Demon Hunter. I think that the Hunt
It does.
has a lot of utility on that map
yeah.
specifically.
Oh, totally. Have you played it as the Brawl this week? Because that's the Brawl this week. Is the Temple of Hot Mogu, right?
No, I've never done any of the brawls.
Oh no. Okay.
He's a dissenter like me.
I love the Brawls just because they're fun. They're different. But I feel you.
They are cool.
Well, I guess.
Just
Well,
no
why
rewards.
don't we? Pardon me.
There's just no rewards.
For doing the Brawls?
Yeah, there's nothing.
No, you get some pretty good honor in them, and you get the weekly quest for doing something different, which is a whackload of honor, if I remember correctly.
Is it?
But yeah,
Okay.
it's a good shot of honor. Some quick fun. But how about instead of talking about what the Brawl is this week, why don't we talk about what we've been up to the last couple weeks? I guess Seaney, we'll start with you. What have you been up to these last 2 weeks, buddy?
For me, I'm actually on a partner push right now on my Twitch channel. So that's everything's going great with that. We're always pulling,
Nice.
above 100 viewers. And I'm just continuing to push for rank 1 this season. I think that's my #1 goal right now.
All right.
That's awesome.
Wait, what's your personal CR sitting at then? How's that push going?
It's going really well. I think we're at 2963 right now on my
nice.
main. So it's going pretty well.
Nice. How about you, Big? What have you been up to these last 2 weeks?
Honestly, not much. I had that video come out that I was really happy that I worked on for a really long time, and got a new one coming out hopefully next week about gearing in World of Warcraft and why it's kind of been an issue for this expansion specifically. But it's really fun. It's well, I shouldn't say fun. It's actually kind of sad, but it's gonna be a really good video, and I'm really happy to see how it turns out.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so this is another gearing video, not the Star Wars memed one you did.
No, and it's kind of funny. I always make something memey, and then I'm like, wait a second, maybe this shouldn't be a meme. Maybe this is worth being something serious.
Yeah.
And so that's how that works.
Awesome. Well, hopefully it's well received. I saw your tweet earlier. The one video you made there hit 70,000 views, I think you said.
Yeah. And so it's kind of fun to see those benchmarks gradually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hopefully you crack 100 soon. I know you're excited for that.
Hopefully, yeah.
Andallyn, how about you? What have you been up to these last 4 weeks? Because you were too busy to join us last episode.
Yeah, I was. I was getting married. It was great. Married the woman of my dreams, and we got to enjoy about 8 days in Cancun, Mexico. So that was awesome.
Nice.
Phenomenal. We enjoyed some beautiful weather, and yeah, so just getting back into the grind, getting back into the swing of things here on the home front, and yeah, excited to be here today. So it's going to be a good episode.
Whoa. I hope so. Actually, I know so.
Yes,
I know
that's
so.
right. You know so.
Well, and I guess for myself, I pretty much did the casual thing I normally do. So I did some random BGs, did a few other things. I'll actually say I was a little disappointed today after reset. Being reset day here in North America, finished work and I was like, okay, let's see what's going on. Oh, hey, this week it's collecting 1,500 honor through Epic BGs. All right, yeah, I'm gonna hop on an Epic BG, and lo and behold, it was Winter Grasp. Surprise, surprise. And so I was like, okay. And being on the alliance, I was like, okay, well, hopefully we're on defense, because on defense we usually win, right? And it was defense, and I was like, all right, yeah, we got this in the bag. We're gonna win. And we lost. I think that's the first time I've ever been on defense and lost. It was.
The odds were in your favor.
Being an alliance player doing random sometimes just it hurts. But other than that, I had a great time there, and I had a real fun time last night sitting in the Oasis Discord because they were doing a 2v2 match. But we'll talk about that later in the events, in the news actually. I guess also in the events. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's hear what Andallyn has for the Need, Greed, and Pass.
This likely won't be a clean feed. All right. So keep your distance, Sally!
All right. Need, Greed, and Pass.
Let's do it.
So this is an awesome segment of our show here where, Sean, what we'll be doing is giving you an option of a certain scenario. We'll pose a question, and all of us will take turns to determine which option we want to roll Need on, which option we want to roll Greed on, and which option we're going to pass on. You can pick one for each, right? So, Here we go. This week's Need, Greed, and Pass. If these popular WoW streamers were raid final boss tiers, or final bosses in certain raid tiers, okay, which boss would have the coolest mechanics, in your opinion? I.e., you're also going to have to tell me which one you need, what those mechanics would be like in your mind, all right? So here are your options to choose from. The final boss of a raid tier. Option 1, Zico.
Oh, no.
Option number 2 is Peekaboo. Option number 3, Asmongold.
Ooh.
Okay, so is this on me to respond to this?
You can go first. You can take a second to think about it. If you've got your answer, go for it. If you want, got to think about it.
Do I need abilities for all three?
No.
Or just one?
You don't. You can just give me. You can just give me like a general idea of the creative juices that are flowing. What's going on in your skull? Like,
Okay.
While you're just mulling this for a second, I just want to remind everybody at home, you guys are playing too. So if you're sitting in Twitch chat, fire away in Twitch chat as you can. If you're sitting at home, fire it into the Twitter or come on over to our Discord. Fire it off in our Discord channel over on the Warcraft Radio Discord.
I actually might go first on my own, unless anyone's ready. Is anyone ready?
I have an idea, but I'm gonna.
Okay. So
Okay.
I'm gonna roll Need on Zico. I think that would be incredibly hilarious. I think you would there. I can just imagine like you'd have a certain part of the boss fight, like where in like the first phase, it would be like a bunch of random players would just be muted, meaning like they couldn't type in chat. they're blanketed, and until you go like do something and unmute all of your raid members, they're all muted, and then I think that'd be hilarious. So I'm gonna roll Need on Zico. I'm gonna roll Greed on Asmongold. That's a tough decision. I think that the Asmongold raid boss would be hilarious. There's probably like Wendy's chicken nuggets, spicy nuggets or something like bouncing down. You have to like dodge them or something. And
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
I don't know. And I'm gonna pass on Peekaboo.
You gonna pass? Okay. Okay. I'm going to. Oh, this was tough. This one was tough for me. I'm gonna need on Peekaboo.
Ooh.
I'm gonna need on Peekaboo. I think we need a good old rogue raid tier boss. And his special thing is what he's going to do is he's going to stun the whole raid randomly and take selfies with a selfie cam.
Nice. With each player.
With each player, yeah.
Yes.
That's going to be the ability, well, or just like the whole raid, and
cinematic,
and that's actually and that's going to show up in your. It's actually going to show up in your hard drive. It's going to show up as a screenshot in your hard drive.
Nice.
Then I'm going to greed. This is tough. I'm going to greed on Zico. He's going to be a frost mage, but he's going to klepto everything. So where instead of silencing people randomly, he's going to just klepto. So you have to be careful on what buffs you're running, because he might just klepto them and buff himself. and I'm just going to pass on Asmund, because I'm afraid that if they made him a raid tier boss, that he would actually just stop. Like, everybody would be there trying to play the game with him, like trying to beat him, and he'd just randomly walk away from World of Warcraft and go start playing some other game.
Salt.
All right. That's me.
I feel like salt.
On to you guys.
Well, I'll have Shawnee, you go first. Give your response.
Okay, sure. So the thing that came to my mind first is I'm gonna roll need on Peekaboo, and I like the idea of a rogue themed like stealth boss, but it's just like randomly in the middle of it, you just get drunkened by White Claws or something, just like a buff or something like this, and it's just really hard
Druids
to deal
of
with.
the Claw. Yes.
I'll probably roll the greed on Asmongold, and then I'd have him be the only boss in the game where you can't see where the loot goes to, so you can just like easily ninja on that boss. And then I'll pass on Zico on that one.
Love it. That's awesome.
Actually, that was identical to my answers, and I had a very similar idea for Asmongold. So I'll need on Peekaboo, and I think his mechanic will be that you'll be randomly teleported to Nagrand Arena on your alt, and you'll be you'll be at 1600 rating, and you'll just fight Peekaboo like 1v1. That's the boss. But then for Asmongold, I think the mechanic, as Shawnee said, like, would be there is no loot. Like you kill it and then nothing. Like it all goes to the boss somehow. But so then I'll just pass on Zico, because I like Zico. I don't want to beat Zico in a raid. I'll keep him alive.
Fair enough. Absolutely classic. I love it. Andallyn, you always come with the best ones. That put a big smile on my face. I love it.
Perfect.
And once again,
I told you it was tough.
That was a good one, though.
Yeah.
I loved it. And such iconic people in our community. Absolutely love it. Well, let's we're rolling through this really fast. Let's actually talk about the upcoming events, though, and then we'll actually get into the heart of the matter.
Get in there and fight! Stop hiding!
All right, let's talk about the events.
Indeed. Well, Andallyn Gaming, he's still doing his 5v5 1v1s, so keep an eye out for that over on the Twitters. I'm not sure. I think Flark is going to start doing tournaments again. I'm just waiting for confirmation to see if it's going to be a regular or not. So, not putting it up there yet, but just as a warning to everybody, he might be doing them again.
You have been warned.
But talking about people that are doing things regularly is the Oasis community. So they're back to doing RBG war games, and this is again low competitive scale. It's not rank 1, 3,000 CR players or anything like that. It's just a lot of really good fun, removing a bunch of the competitive angst, if you will, and that anxiety, and just getting in there and having some fun. So the next one's going to be on the 17th of September. So if you want, go on over to the Oasis community. They have a channel for that. You just put in your information, and different team captains will whisper you, and you can go and have fun. And yeah, one neat thing we found out the last time we were doing war games is one of the players was actually on their low level alt, and they were earning experience and honor as a spectator.
Smart.
Yeah. So we may have found a neat way to power level tunes on the side. But if you want to go over there, there's going to be a link for the Twitter announcement for that, as well as they're doing 2v2s now, 2v2 tournaments with Vonnie and a few other guys from Vonnie's guild. So if you want to go again over there, this time it's kind of like Flark does. It's just submit your name. You don't need to have partners. They'll make partners for you. And the next tournament's going to be on the 27th. Yeah. And then, of course, there is the Blizzard tournaments. The MDI Season 2 is ongoing. We've had, I think, 3 groups have played already. I think I should have that wrong. And the next group play is going to be this weekend. That should be the last one. And that's going to set up all the... oh shit! What did they say? Like all that, they'll set up who's going to actually go to the grand finals, and then following that, on the 25th of September, is going to be the AWC Grand Finals to find out who is the winners for EU and NA respectively. That's it for what I know is ongoing events. Does anybody else know of anything? And if so, speak now or forever hold your peace.
I think that covers it.
I think that does.
It's
I don't think so.
Oh.
I was gonna say I don't think I haven't heard of anything else. So I think that should
Oh.
pretty much cover everything.
You said I don't think so, as if like you had something else you're about to like just drop, and I was like, ooh.
Maybe I do. Maybe it's secret. You know.
Okay.
The Bigmoran tournament announced next week. No.
Yes.
Well, again, listeners, if you know of anything that we're missing, let us know, and we'll add it to the segment for the next show, and we'll definitely help promote it. But I think now that we've gotten through those few items, let's get into the subject analysis, and we'll talk to Seanie about what it's like to be a demon hunter in today's meta. And also, something that's dear to me is talking about stress and anxiety playing World of Warcraft.
I'm gonna light you up, sweet cheeks.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah. So, Seanie, I think that's the fastest we've ever gotten through an intro. That was
22
amazing.
minutes and 15 seconds. That's pretty good.
Speed
That
running.
was. Yeah. Well, I think we're just trying to keep up to the Demon Hunter is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So- but I guess so. I want to say, so when I first reached out to you, Seanie, we were talking about doing a Demon Hunter kind of in-depth review or whatever, and then there's you were talking about stresses and anxieties and what comes along with playing the game today, and I thought that was actually a much better topic, because I think as much as deep diving and picking apart a class can be really fun, that's something we haven't actually really talked about at all in this on the show, is talking about the stresses and anxieties that we have as players in the competitive atmosphere that we have on the ladder or in PvP, right? Because it's I don't know about you, but I find it extremely stressful, and I think that's also one of the reasons why it's so enjoyable, is because when you win, it's just that it feels that much more rewarding, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, WoW is just such an adrenaline, like, when you win and you're at high rating and you're beating a team that maybe you usually lose to, it's a really good feeling. But at the same time, I think that it can be anxiety provoking, like you mentioned before.
So how do you deal with that?
There's things that I like repeat to myself, and I think we can get into it later. But just off the top of my head, just understanding that it is a game and trying to take myself out of it in the moment, because I feel like I can get personally like really wrapped up in it. And also just like repeating phrases to myself. I was thinking about this before. What was I thinking? It was like basically I repeat phrases to myself like I have to keep putting myself in the situation, if that makes any sense. Like, for example, I'll be versing a player and I'll like continue to like lose to them. And I'm really nervous the first time. But then if you verse them a lot of times, you get kind of used to it to the point where it doesn't really become a factor. And I think that this happens in like every bracket, and not only that, I think it happens in a lot of games. Like I played StarCraft before this as well, and before I was able to hit like Masters 1, for example, and when I was M2, this was a really hard jump for me. And I think each jump, you just have to like keep pushing yourself until you become like comfortable playing in that rating, and then you should be able to like move up, you know?
Yeah, exposure therapy, absolutely.
Well, actually, I have a follow up to that.
Sure.
I'm a washed up noob now. I only play twos, but I know like back in the day, back in my prime, I would constantly encounter like mental counters for specific players. It's not necessarily that they were that much better than you. It was just that something about their play style, something about them was always very difficult to deal with. Do you experience that? I know you play a lot of twos as well, and obviously threes. Do you have mental counters to specific people in 3v3 or in arena in general?
Usually it's more about the class that they play than the player themselves, but the name doesn't help also either. Like if you're playing at high MMR and you see a name that you've looked up to, it can be kind of hard in that situation. But yeah, mostly for me, it's like more of the class they play, except for one player in 3v3. For me, like when I'm playing with an Ardruid in 3v3, especially, Calm and I have played so many games this season, and I just lose to that guy. Like so many times I lose to Calm.
Oh,
So I
the
guess
rogue.
yeah, Calm the Rogue.
Yeah.
He,
Yeah,
he doesn't calm you down.
No, and honestly,
So
his
troll.
name is like completely not how he is in arena because I've played with him a couple times. He's the most anxious person, like screaming. He's not calm whatsoever.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. When I was thinking about this ahead of time, I know like my thing, I always have a fear that I'm going to let people down. It's a fear, it's a performance fear almost of afraid that I don't know enough or afraid that I'm going to make a mistake and be the reason for the loss. And does anybody else have that, or is that just am I the only one?
I think most people probably have some form of that. I mean, I think it'd be weird to not have that sort of fear of letting other people down in arena. I think it's just kind of how you cope with that. I know it's weird. So I watch high level Twitch VODs all day of people playing high level arena to make skill cap videos, and so many times throughout the game, players will make mistakes. Like rank 1 players will make really big mistakes so many times throughout the game, but some like the best players are just better at dealing with their mistakes, and I guess part of that probably involves sort of packaging that mistake into something that isn't that big of a deal. If they make it a big deal, I think that's when it becomes a problem. I mean, the more you become fixated on the mistake, I think that's when things become difficult for players.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I guess it's like you said. It's more. It's okay to have anxiety. It's okay to have stress, but it's also how you deal with it.
Right. Absolutely. Right? Yeah. I think for me, I know that whenever I'm kind of getting to a point, because when I would play arena, I would play like with my main team, and then I would also play with some friends, and they'd be like, okay, but I know like in my head that if I'm playing with this person and this person, that's my best chance at pushing rating, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes maybe a new person would kind of come in and join that rank of like, okay, I know this guy really knows what he's doing, really good, he's really tight on mechanics and everything. I want to be able to at least match what he's doing so I don't feel inadequate, you know? And I think the first couple of games, it's a little anxious because you're kind of feeling it out. You don't really know if you're going to be able to, and you just kind of have to roll with it and figure out and hold your own and have some kind of confidence in what you're doing. The word's kind of like, remember your training kind of comes in, but it kind of feels like that because it's like, you've been playing so much and you've been playing enough to where you should be confident in your abilities. So I think it's one of those things that just kind of, I feel like it subsides pretty quickly with time, but it just takes getting all the way into the pool until the water doesn't feel so cold, you know?
That's it, yeah. But what about with LFG in that though? Like, because I think that's one of the biggest anxieties people have is they don't want to wade through LFG and tank 500 CR, but until they find somebody that fits in or matches.
Yeah, I think LFG is a different beast because most of the time when you're wadding or wading through like people that you've already somewhat vetted, it's a much different experience than when you're just trekking through LFG and you're just grabbing the next guy off the street, so to speak. Because in my experience, most of the people that we picked up in LFG, 98% of them had no idea what they were doing. 2% would.
Yeah. Shawnee, Big, do you guys have the same experience? Have you
Well-
waded through LFG lately?
No, I mean I haven't waded through LFG this season,
Yeah.
which is a good thing, and that's what kind of happens. Like, when you get higher rated, is you start to build a B tag, and that's something that's really important too. To get high rated is like having these connections and RBGs and arena. Like, I don't play with people if they're not on my B tag. I don't go into LFG to like find people, but I remember LFG because I'm not this like multi rank 1 player, and I'm not used to this, right? This is kind of the first season where I actually have B tags, whereas when I came back in BFA season 4, or like I came back in season 2, then I quit season 3, and then I played all of season 4. Like that entire time I used LFG, and yeah, I mean I don't really think that people know what they're doing so much in LFG, but it's hard because like I needed that chance too, right? Someone needed to give me a chance, and I think what it all comes down to too is like this being such a social game, and you needing to constantly prove yourself to your peers. Like I remember when I first started getting into RBGs, you always need a break, and my break was given to me by someone named Plato. She plays like lower rated games, and then because of her, I was able to find someone called Reckless, and then because of him, I was able to find Daticus, and then like you keep kind of moving up the ladder, right?
Okay. But like you said, though, it's that break. It's that it was that moment in the elevator you're able to prove yourself and get yourself up to the executive suite, if you will.
Yeah, and I think something else is like, I'm sorry to cut you off, but finding that diamond in the rough, because all you need is one person, right? So you're gonna find a bunch of things that's not gonna work out. You're gonna find a bunch of people that you calm with, and you just like are annoyed by them, or you argue, right? Until you find that one person. And like for me, it was finding a healer, which was really important in 2v2 last season. And so that like I found him through LFG, for example. So if I wasn't there in that moment, willing to fail again, I wouldn't have found him.
Interesting. What were you gonna say, Big?
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, I think the experience of a lot of rank 1 players is that it as Shawnee said, it just takes one person. Like you need to play with, like you need to be invited to play with one person, and that completely changes the avenues that are available to you. For me, that happened in Cataclysm. Played with this priest named Atarius. He doesn't play anymore, but just that like one queue session, I added him to B tag. We started playing regularly. He was a multi-glad at that point. I was not. And, that just changed who I had available to queue with. And I think what's difficult is with the high-end PvP community is they're very, very territorial. Like people have a lot of biases, and, they like to pretend that, it's an exclusive club sometimes, and that not everyone is allowed into that. Speaking of like another demon hunter, like a good friend of mine, like MVQ. MVQ was a rank 1 DH. I think he got it in. I don't think it was Legion. I think it was BFA. In any case, people would flame him all the time on Twitter. Like he's a good player. Maybe not the best demon hunter in the world, but he's a good player. But and he was rank 1. But people were just like pretending that he's absolutely trash at the game, which that's obviously not the case. Like if you're playing at rank 1 games, you're not bad at the game.
Yeah.
So I think there's this weird toxic social element that's difficult to get around. If you're trying to break into that, rank 1 scene, you really have to rely on other people sometimes. It's very difficult to do these things alone.
Well, and that definitely has a whole other layer of stress that I personally haven't experienced, but I felt it in a way is, the fear of the stress of getting socially flamed and getting all that social pressure of people yeah, basically gatekeeping in that. So I haven't actually felt that. Has anybody else felt that? No. Andallyn, have you had to deal with any of that?
So, explain to me what you mean by socially gatekeeping. I've always heard of gatekeeping just as like if someone's like hard stuck at like 2K and they just constantly play at 2K, but they're like a really good 2K player, but they won't get past. That's a gatekeeper. They're just like they're just locking that down. So, like, explain to me what your terminology is in that regard.
Well, I'm thinking so inside that social circle of the rank one or the gladiator circle, if you will, if people think that you aren't deserving of it because I don't know. What case in point? You got rank one because you were a DK in the first season of Wrath when DKs were overpowered and all I had to do was push 3 buttons, stuff like that, right?
I think a good way to think about it is like a reputation bar. Like every player on the ladder starts out at like unfriendly reputation when it comes to like the rank one scene, and so you have to just grind your way through that
Dailies.
social element. Yeah, you have to do your dailies essentially.
This sounds like a Zaryu stream, yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't matter how many dailies. Sometimes it doesn't matter how many dailies you do. Like people, won't like you anyway for some obscure reason.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the gatekeeping is. Like there's this social element that is often very toxic and difficult to get through. I mean, it doesn't even have to be limited to rank 1 ratings. Like
Yeah.
as you said, people might be like, "Oh, you got Gladiator and Wrath Lich King. You're okay, boomer." It's like that sort of attitude is it permeates throughout the ladder.
Yeah.
That actually hurt me a little bit, calling me a boomer. Thanks. I know I'm old. Well, I guess so. Here's the question then: how does one overcome that? Then do you just keep grinding, or do you
do your dailies?
Well, I guess, or do you accept the fact that people like you can't? Not everybody will like you, right? Like I think that's an inherent fact to humanity is not everybody likes the same person, and there's no way that everybody will like you as you're coming up through whatever you're going through. Do you just accept that and move on, or carve yourself your own circle? Is that even a possibility, depending on wherever you're going? What do you think, Shawnee?
I think something to add about people not liking you is kind of weird. So, in my opinion, from someone that went from I never played Demon Hunter and BFA till now, where I'm being more experienced with it, it seems like people don't hate on you until you start beating them in arena or RBGs, right? Like they don't care so much, or like they might be friendly with you until you beat them in arena, or you start like taking games off them. That's when like that toxicity can come out, and that gatekeeping that you guys were talking about will come out. That's kind of mostly what I wanted to say about that too.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's a survival tactic kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, it's a survival of the ego even? Is it like when somebody thinks that they're so great and then they get beaten, then they lash out?
Well, I don't think it's more so that. I think it's more so a human tendency to say, hey, if the obstacle that's standing in my way of my goal is this other person, so I'm going to go do whatever I got to do. It's really not that bad. Because if this person maybe their teammates didn't want to play with them as much, maybe that wouldn't be so much of a problem for me anymore. So I don't think it's necessarily this pure nefarious type of like, I'm going to be the evil guy today. Ha ha ha. Like I think it's more so just how most human behaviors are that aren't exactly tasteful. They're passed off as being like, I'm just doing what anybody else would do, or people do it to me, or that kind of thing. So it's perfectly human, but it doesn't make it right.
I think to touch on something that you talked about before too is like, do you even need these people? Like, and can you do the miracle thing of getting, let's say in 3v3, getting 2 of your friends to rank 1 rating? And the answer is yes, you can, but it's going to take way longer than if, for example, you played with two rank ones, or to get your first gladiator, you played with two people that had, gladiator experience. And I think that's where some of the gatekeeping come to. That like there really aren't these like 3-man teams that grind out tens of thousands of games anymore. It's more or less just like, okay, which high rated player am I going to trade spots with today to play with? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think to add to that, I think that when they converted from a team-based ladder to an individual ladder, for those of you who might not know, I think it was in the middle of Miss Pandaria, they changed the ladder from being 3v3 rosters, where you actually had to have teams of players, and you got, your achievements as teams, to being all individual rating. I think that might have had a lot to do with it, because back in the day, you kind of felt stuck with your team in a way. So you had no choice but to develop these like relationships with these people. Even if you didn't think they're like, the best players, you still had to have their backs. But now I think, I mean, there's obviously reasons why the individual rating system works and why it's good. But I think one consequence too is it has increased the possibility of this sort of gatekeeping, because you're not forced to play with anyone. You can change. There are no teams. You're not bound to any two people at any time.
Right. I think that is a good point.
Yeah, just to talk about this too, it's like it's also not time to sound the alarm, so to say. Like if you think if it's seriously like a new player coming to WoW, like you're not instantly going to be like in all this drama and stuff. I think that it only happens, or at least it only happened for me, when I'm now pushing rank 1, or I'm like now I'm top page on RBGs, for example, right? Like I think that anybody can get like a gladiator title or low hero of the horde and not step on anybody's toes, or like not get into this drama. But for me at least, it really was like a high rated, or like the really, really high rated community, where like that's where you're going to like run into all these issues. And that's kind of what I deal with on a day-to-day basis too, because I'm like currently like, living it out,
Yeah, you got that target painted on you now.
Yeah, for sure.
I think too, I was gonna say, I think too, with like RBGs specifically, is like RBGers are like elephants. They remember everything. Like they'll remember if they capped off of you in some game like 3 years ago. So there's a lot of attitudes like that are kind of difficult to shake in higher rated RBGs. But for the most part, it's not that. You just ignore it. You're like, whatever, no big deal. But yeah, it can be. Some people can be very toxic in a very specific way. They remember every little detail, and they know every reason why you're not a good player, even though you are a good player.
And they'll find out what they do that pushes your buttons the most, and they'll do that.
Yes, but exactly. I like RPG.
So my question. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's kind of the fun part about RPGs. It's so crazy.
Yeah. It is a really fun game mode. I honestly, the best time I had playing the game ever was playing RPGs in Mists of Pandaria. It was
for sure.
So much fun. But I think my question is, kind of going back to your point earlier, Big, about the arena teams that were actually ordained, that you would have to join an arena team. Isn't that, in essence, a baked-in form of gatekeeping? Because, let's just say, we just got done talking earlier before that, even, about how you just needed to get your break. You just needed to get your chance to play with somebody, who was maybe up that next rung on that ladder, so to speak. Wouldn't that still be the case, though, in a team, in the BC model, so to speak? Because you would have to just get your break, get your chance to get that invite to the next team that's up that next rung of the next caliber of play. So I'm kind of curious, how does that change from a team-based model over to an individual ranking?
Well, I think it's kind of based, what Shawnee said. Like, you back in the day, you just played with your friends. I mean, it's another thing is it's a consequence of the player base getting smaller and smaller. Is that there was sort of a bigger player pool to choose from, but once you selected players out of that pool, you were bound to them for the most part.
Yeah.
You didn't really leave your team. because you basically had to regrind rating. It was kind of annoying, yada yada yada. So I mean, there definitely were though like there was gatekeeping for sure in the team-based system. But the nice thing about it, as I said, is it allowed you to really develop a relationship with two other players. And
Yeah.
that's not to say you can't do that now, but right now there's really no incentive to do that. It's because you're not bound to a team, so you can play with whoever you want. Um, and I'm not saying that's bad or good. It's just different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's because I think it's almost more so a factor of those things. I was thinking, in the sense that the reduced player pool, the fact that that's shrunk, and you feel it especially at the top, right? Because I mean, it's even a smaller percentage of those players who are playing at that level and looking for those types of games than are the large pool of players just looking to queue on any given Tuesday. So
Yeah.
I think the fact that I feel like there's a couple other factors, maybe that are a little bit more of a dominant role than maybe just that system. But it was an interesting thought.
I think the CR system breaking away from teams actually helped to improve or to break down some of those gatekeeping walls, because if you had people that were teammates and had developed that synergy, then they were less likely to break away and try somebody new, right? Versus now it being personal CR, it's like, oh, you can move around, and if you're coming up, then you have the opportunity to kind of break through that threshold and join into some of that elite core. I would hesitate that the unfriendliness of the alt system and just how much work a player has to put in these days to have an alt, to have that second tune that they don't care about the CR with, that they can just play any given Tuesday. That is probably one of the detriments to the current system, in that if somebody's put all the effort to stay ahead of the curve and be in that upper CR because they were ahead of the curve, they're grinding it every day, they're less likely to chance taking a hit to their CR and to drop back down ladder, because they're trying to give somebody another chance, another opportunity. They don't. Unless I'm wrong on that, unless there's people that are like, no, I'll do that and I can totally come back from losing all that CR, and maybe that's a possibility I'm not thinking of. But I'm guessing that's not the case, that a lot of people that are fighting that hard to be in that 3K bracket aren't willing to just pick up anybody off the ladder just to give them a shot, right?
Yeah, and I have a question for Shawnee. Are you the type of player who doesn't care about CR? I mean, I think a lot of players tend to think they don't care about CR, but are you selective with who you queue with, or do you want to preserve your 2960 for them? Like, are you going to only queue with your main team right now, or do you not care and generally you would queue with other people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's kind of blown out of proportion too. Like this idea of top rated players, like I don't really care, but everyone does care, and I have no shame in saying, of course, I care about my rating, especially for my first rank 1 title if I was able to get it this season, or if I am able to get it. And the way that I personally circumvent that is like having multiple alts of the same class. So like I have a Demon Hunter at 26, 28, and 2960 or whatever it is right now. So if I want to play those lower rated games, I'm able to do that. The only problem with this is, like, for the normal person, it's like, well, go make 3 Demon Hunters, go make 3 Priests. Like, I play the game on stream every single day. Like, I'm trying to do this as my job. You know what I mean? So I'm able to do that. But for like the normal person, like we talked about with alts before, that can be quite a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think people are like, I don't care about CR, but no, you do. Like, it's especially at the end of the season, you definitely care about CR now. Like, oh, like now you don't want to queue with me. It's the end of the season. It's like, okay, I see you, buddy. And it's I think it's even, I don't know about your experience, Shawnee, but I think it's it's even worse in RBGs because like I was always way more tied to my RBG rating than I was to like threes because man, if you lose like at low rating and RBGs, you like for I don't know how the system is anymore, but you don't gain points for a while, you know, so you get really punished for losing and at high ratings, and I think like that's part of the anxiety too, is like you don't want to branch out and queue with other people sometimes because it's like you worry you're never going to get that back. I'm wondering if you've ever like, you know, if that wor bothers you sometimes and you're like, oh man, I don't think I could get my rating back if I lose. Is that something you experience?
For me personally, my arena rating like is I'm more tied to that, but I definitely understand where you're coming from. Like, the weird thing about RBGs for me, for example, was I think Hero was like 2400 last season or something,
Hmm.
and I finished the season at 2814. So I was so above the cutoff that's like, what do I even have to lose at that point? And I guess for someone that's closer to Hero, that would really
Hmm.
matter a lot more. Like what you talked about, if you lose to a low MMR team, it's really hard to get it back. But at the same time, when you get better at RBGs and when people start to notice you a little bit, like I played with Shane's team the other day, and I've never played with any of them before, but I was kind of able to fit into the team almost right away because I just knew my role as a demon hunter.
Hmm.
And I think maybe in the lower rated groups where they're only high rated because um, they play with the same 10 people every day, it could be hard to, get in there and like just, boom right away, like start doing the right thing. And you don't have people playing around you right away, right? I think it works a little bit differently for like the top RPG groups. Like they've just been doing it for so long. As me, that's someone, that's newer. These people have been doing it for like legit, I think it's been like 10 years or like how many years has it been since RPGs come out? Like they've been doing it a really long time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean Shane Slip and Slide. I'm assuming that's Slip and Slide. I mean, I think he's been doing RBG since season 9 when they came out.
Yeah.
So I wanted to pivot slightly because I've dealt with anxiety pretty much my whole adult life, and the way it affects me the most in PvP is that I really like structured games. You know, I really like playing by the script or at least having a game plan that's really, really predictable. And for me, that's always been like I really like playing with rogues and mages because they make the game really, really straightforward for me. I noticed you play Warrior DH and then like Priest DH and twos. Do you have the same sort of outlook to how you approach the game? Like, do you like structure? Is that something that you tend to lean on when it comes to, strategy and that and whatnot?
Yeah, I think that there's some things, to take away from that anxiety that you can kind of script out right away. But what I'm thinking about too is something that I was struggling with yesterday is sometimes you don't have the answers to everything. I think RMP is like you said, the quintessential, okay, we have a script, we do a go. This is how we do the game, rinse and repeat.
Right.
But when you're playing a cleave, sometimes things can get hectic. And
Yeah.
yesterday we were versus the turbo at high rating. We don't have answers to all their cooldowns. Like our Druid DH Warrior does not have answers to our Druid Turbo for every single Doom wins. We don't have an answer for every single sentence. Like I can't say, okay, I'm going to Netherwalk Ascendance, which I would like to do, but I can't. Like for example, if I was playing with a Shaman, we can Earthen Wall every Doom wins, and I can Netherwalk every Ascendance, and then I can like dash out the spear. But sometimes you'll definitely have to improvise. But yeah, for sure, I think that there's some things that you can talk about before the game that could really help with anxiety during it for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say for me personally, I do not like playing with players who are not willing to be scripted or at least be predictable, like that for me is like, oh, I hate that. Like
Hmm.
it feels terrible. Like I like to have this structure to each game. Um
I'm gonna
just
admit that's one
yeah.
reason that's one thing I loved about Jamili is he was so unpredictable sometimes. I loved watching him just for that. Like he would like just randomly do stuff. It was-
Yeah. Well, I think being unpredictable is fun, but it's not necessarily the best, It's
Oh yeah.
like
no, no, he did lose games.
yeah.
And eligibility, but whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's something to talk about too. Is like if you are a lower rated player right now listening to this, or and if you think like you're gonna get into a rank one game, you're just gonna like be blown away by what's happening up there. It's not really like that. You're gonna realize that these players, like the best players, and something that just comes to my mind is like Vanguards. Vanguards is a
Mhm.
player that is so consistent. Like that's what makes him good. Is he's just like
Oh yeah.
incredibly consistent at what he does. He doesn't make mistakes. He just does the same thing every single game. And when you verse him, like, okay, we're just gonna lose at this point in the game, and that's what makes players really scary too, is like the consistency of it. And in our game, like, it's not really like the flashy like no scope headshots. More or less, it's like the good players just know what to do at the right time, and they rarely make mistakes. So like minimizing mistakes in World of Warcraft at high rating is what really is gonna like push to get like higher rating, if that makes any sense.
So here's a kind of a blanket question that's kind of veering off topic a little bit, but who knows? Maybe we'll bring it back. So how as a player in Arena do you identify something as, oh, that's a mistake, as opposed to saying like, well, no, I did this because of this, or I feel like that was the right move. How do you identify, or how would you say you identify something as a mistake?
Well, I mean, I can try to answer this one, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
I mean,
Sure, go for it.
I because I have to make videos. My job is
Yeah.
to make videos of how to play World of Warcraft, and so a lot of that is thinking about mistakes. And so a lot of right now, like the metagame, the predominant metagame for a while has been primarily about cooldown trading. So you want to be really, really efficient with how you trade your cooldowns. You don't want to use, it's like a Goldilocks situation. You don't want to use too little, you don't want to use too much. And the more you can just be consistent with using your cooldowns, presumably while also doing a good enough damage rotation, that's like how you get high rating. You do a good enough damage rotation and you trade cooldowns effectively. What lower rated players tend to do is they go to one of the two extremes. They either trade too little cooldowns and they don't do anything and they just die, or they trade too many cooldowns, when they're getting killed, and then suddenly they don't have anything for the next kill setup. So it's kind of like balancing, knowing what is most efficient to trade at any given time. And it does kind of, Shawnee, maybe you could talk a bit more about this, but like 2v2 is a bit different though. Like 2v2 is not necessarily about it. I mean, you do have to trade efficiently, but 2v2 is slightly different. Like how do you describe making a mistake in 2v2, Shawnee?
I think this is a super interesting topic. Getting better and being able to VOD review and like look at it, and like I think a lower rated player would probably struggle. It's like, okay, what did I do wrong here? I think for me, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm able to look at my VOD and be like, okay, I messed up here, right? And that just comes with time. And I think that this also creates, which is something to talk about, which I've thought about before, this like weird thing in WoW where high rated players think the game is really easy. And I think that they think the game is really easy because it's so natural for them, I guess. Like if there's any way to describe it with like my progression in WoW is like when I'm getting to the higher ranks, like if you break the game down, talk to a top player, like it's starting to make sense to me. It's starting to click, but getting to that point is really hard. From like 0 CR to like 2400 is like really hard to like get to that point, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And like starting to understand the mistakes. But like for me, for example, I'm starting to like look at my games and be like, okay, I stunned here, but we didn't double cover the team. Or like when you play RMP, for example, if you didn't triple cross every single go, like that's really bad. But even for Demon Hunter, if I stun and we didn't Stormbolt the healer, or I double stunned and then it didn't stun the healer, like that's bad. Or if I didn't trade a cooldown properly, like maybe I blurred when I only needed to run away and use my mobility. There's like things like that where they're very specific situations, but you're going to learn, like when you get better at this game, it's going to click at one point and you're going to be like, okay, I just need to do X, Y, and Z in this situation. And then the game's going to seem really easy. Like for me, the game isn't really hard. What I'm dealing with is more like the anxiety. Like yesterday, I was one game away from getting my first 3K and my hand was literally shaking. And that's why,
Oh, man.
that was really, really tough for me.
Yeah.
But to answer the question about the 2v2 game, like identifying mistakes in 2v2, I think it's really, really comp dependent, because there's some comps like DH Warrior, or sorry, warrior Druid where your only goal is to survive, and then there's setup based comps like rogue mage, or if like the comps that I played like DH priest or like DH shaman where like you have to play really fast. I think in 2v2 also, to talk about that, it's extremely comp dependent, way more so than in 3v3, where it almost feels like some matchups are borderline unwinnable, whereas
Yeah.
that I think that's something to take into account too.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I can kind of identify and put myself in your own shoes. I remember playing a couple of years ago, right there at the brink of hitting my first 2K, in my hand, I'm playing my Holy Paladin, my hand shaking, and I'm just trying to don't F it up, don't F it up,
Yeah, for sure,
I'm like,
sure.
just focus, you know how to do this, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there you go. There's the anxiety we're talking about, right? But
Yeah.
But I think that's awesome. I like how you talked about you are starting to get to that point where you can watch your own VODs, and probably I would expect you could extrapolate that out to other people's VODs and identify pretty rapidly, like, okay, this was a mistake. This was a mistake. I feel like in order to be able to identify that mistake, you need to be able to compare that to something. Like, compare that to the perfection, right? Compare that to the ideal.
Yeah.
So my question is how, as a player who's trying to understand, how do you get a concept? How do you grasp a solid understanding of what the ideal ought to be?
Yeah, I think that's interesting to talk about too, where like what I was talking about before is when you get higher rated, you get a better understanding of the game as a whole and how like other classes should play too, because something about this game is like knowing every single class's abilities are really important, for example, and like understanding the game as a whole, like how every class should play, is what really is going to push you. And I think that something that you can do as like a 2100 player right now is you could absolutely watch streams of people that are higher rated than you, and you should be watching the VODs and literally just carbon copy what they're doing, right? And I think that that's something that I did in StarCraft, for example. Like when I was trying to get high rated in StarCraft, I would watch a VOD, I would go in and I would practice what they did, and I would literally just play them. I didn't think for myself, right? And the only time that now I'm starting to think for myself is when I'm the number whatever it is DHNA right now. When you're starting to get really, really high is when you have to be like, okay, what works for me, right? But you don't really get the right to decide what works for you when you're not good enough yet, if that makes any sense. I know it may sound harsh, but like I was there too. Like, okay, back then, for example, my favorite DH was Trinacetate. Like, I love him.
Yep.
He's a great streamer, great guy.
Yeah.
And what I would do is literally just copy exactly what I even copied his Steel UI, and I still use it to this day. Like, that's how much I literally carbon copied him. And I think that finding a mentor in this game is incredibly important to getting that understanding that we were talking about before. And that's something that people, like, it's not almost commonplace, whereas in StarCraft, and that's where I came from, it's extremely common to have someone like, yo, what do I do in X situation, right? And it's not looked down upon, where it is kind of looked down upon in this game to get coaching, right?
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be, right? You should be able to ask people questions.
I think coaching is actually okay. I think the problem is that people have overused the word coaching when really they're boosting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
I've always found it a bit problematic with what. So so my version of StarCraft is Smash Bros. Smash Bros. Melee.
Yeah, I played Melee. I don't know if you played Melee. I went to the tournaments for that. I played Sheik.
Oh,
It's
nice.
awesome.
So you'll know a bit about this. So the top Melee players do VOD reviews. They do matchup analysis all the time on their streams. It's a big part of becoming good at Smash Bros. Is kind of learning the foundations of a matchup. And a lot of times it's, the best players who are like, oh, when you're in this position of the map, you need to be looking out for this. They kind of break down the game at its most fundamental level. But WoW doesn't. I mean, I hate to plug skill cap here, but outside of the skill cap, there's really no place where you can get detailed VOD analysis of games and really know what exactly is going wrong in a matchup. I know some streamers, they do break down matches, but it's not as commonplace in the WoW community for whatever reason. And I really wish it was, because I think WoW is both a simple and a complicated game. I think the general strategy of how you win games in PvP is relatively straightforward. what's difficult is all the little details.
The
And the
nuance.
details,
Yeah.
you're right, and that's where things go wrong. And that's where having, a coach or someone like a mentor would be able to sort of help you understand those details, because I think that's a lot of times where players struggle with is those really small decisions in matchups.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest. I'd be bloody scared to record myself and then provide that video to somebody to review, because almost everybody who offers to do that, they want to do it on a stream or something, which then means all their followers get to see all the mistakes I made. And that is scary.
I think
That's me.
that can definitely sound scary for like someone to do on stream for sure. And I
Mm.
think that this kind of talks about like what is the process of getting better in this game. And I think it was touched on before, like how Melee players do VOD reviews. Like that is part of the process of getting better, right? It is
Yeah.
part of the process, and it's scary to do, right? It's scary to like
Oh yeah.
look yourself in the mirror and be like, okay, what are the mistakes I'm making in this matchup, right? It's really hard to do that, but that's part of improving at this game or like any video games is you have to do VOD review, right? You have to do research, right? And then you have to practice the game. You can't just log in every day and grind games. Like that's not how it works, at least for me, to get better. Like I do all those things. And also it's important to note like these top players do VOD reviews, right? They might
Mhm.
not be talking about it, but like I'm friends with them and they sit there and they analyze their games and they're extremely self-critical on themselves. And that's something that you may not see on the stream. You just see them like owning or whatever, and then they get off the stream, they look at the VODs, right? They do a lot of like what's called like theory crafting in their head that like the top players are doing that, but they may not be
Yeah.
talking about it, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I wish that part was more publicly available, the talking about it. Because yeah, it's very humbling, I think, in a way to, or it's very comforting to know that top players struggle with their gameplay too. And I think if that was more public, I think that would make players feel better and more confident in themselves, because yeah, it's it's easy to assume that top players are playing perfectly, and there's no way you can get to that level. I think a lot of people fall into that trap, but no, I think with enough time, if you know how to practice and how to identify mistakes, that's how that problem eventually gets solved.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
what would you
that's something
say?
important to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. Did you want to finish?
Yeah, I just on that thought, what I was talking about before and relating it back to anxiety and a player that thinks that they can't get to that point or whatever is that regardless if you have the anxiety and this like self-doubt too, which is something that I have, like, and I'm not scared to talk about it because it's something I've dealt with my whole life, right? Is like me doubting myself or like me having anxiety for an arena. Like you have to go in with confidence too. And I think that's something that I struggled with a little bit earlier in the season. It's like, okay, I got to this rating, but I almost like thought that I didn't deserve to win or like I got really scared. Like you need to like push through and like you need to be confident in yourself regardless of the anxiety and like you need to like I don't know, keep pressing on. I don't know how else to describe it for sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So
What was that? What were you gonna say, Andallyn?
yeah, I was gonna ask another question here to kind of follow up. So talking about these processes on how to how to just get better at the game, what would be your opinion on the efficacy of like an iterative process? Meaning, like, I'm gonna watch my VOD, and I'm gonna try to identify what I could do a little bit better each time, as opposed to another type of process, which is kind of like what you mentioned, Shawnee, earlier about how you found Trent's stream and you didn't think for yourself. You let his like what he does do all the thinking, and you just carbon copied. How do you compare those two methods? Can you compare them, or do you think one's maybe more effective than the other?
Are you talking about like if you want to from the get-go figure everything out yourself or copy somebody, the differences between this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for one, time efficiency, something that I think you were kind of hinting at there is for sure a thing. Because, like, if you're a new player at the game, you can sit there and decide, okay, what talents do I take in this matchup? And really try to think for yourself, what do I do? But then the top players already figured that out for you. So, in my opinion, if I were new to this game, again, I would just like copy someone just like I did. And I think that's why I'm getting better. I got better quicker, if that makes any sense, is me taking that thought process out and just trying to focus on my gameplay and just trying to like perform in the moment and do the right thing, right? I think that people maybe get too tied up on, because I do have lower rated people in my stream come in and say, okay, what do you think about this, or like what do you think about cycle of hatred with chaos theory? Okay, that may be a good idea, but there's a reason why the top players don't do it already, right?
Yeah. Huh.
So I think, for sure, if you're a new player, I think that it's way more time efficient to copy somebody, and get to a higher rating. And then when you feel like you have mastered the class, or like you're getting better at the class, and by no means I feel like I've mastered the itch at this point, but I have a much better grasp than I did like a year and a half ago when I started playing. Like once you put in some serious time with K, then you could be like, all right, I prefer to use Chaos Theory other than Collective Anguish here, which are two legendaries in the DH community. We're kind of split on which one to use in certain matchups, right? Like, okay, I just prefer this. This works for me, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that there's, I mean, I expected you to say like it's gonna save you a lot of time that way, but I wasn't sure if maybe you thought that there was a certain element of like, of just like there's more the integral of like the journey, meaning like by the time you got to that same point, you would have had more under your belt by kind of going down your own path or kind of figuring out yourself, as opposed to just straight up copying someone or. But yeah, it totally makes sense. I think that's a neat option. I know with Holy Paladin, I like to kind of Vindy and Snow Mixie were my two people that I was just like, okay, I gotta figure out what do they do? Like I just went in their stream and I would just ask them questions. Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? And that was really cool too, because I think that was one of the biggest things that I picked up on when I was trying to figure out how to play arenas was streamers who are trying to make a name for themselves. Like this was when Snow Mixie had like 60 something viewers. So like she would actually respond to stuff I said, and it's like now if I go on her stream, I'll get lost in the fray. But, streamers who are trying to make a name for themselves and who are really good players, they'll answer your questions and they'll give you the information if you ask. And heck, you might even be able to add them on BTEC. So
I was enjoying going to streams where there's only like 20 people in the stream, much more than going to 100 plus, just because then you actually have a conversation with the person. You're not lost in, like you said, lost in the fray. There's something I heard. I can't remember. I heard somewhere, and it was an interesting idea of losing to improve, of being willing to find something you need to focus on and just keep practicing that until you have it perfected, understanding that you may lose a bunch of CR to do that, but in doing so then you perfect that, that overcome that hurdle of the technique or the skill that you need to improve to then breach a break point or something. Did you ever run into that at all, Shawnee, in your climb, where you had to like kind of reset a little bit and go back and perfect something, or was it always an upwards trajectory overall?
Oh, absolutely. I think that I've definitely failed, and or I've had to like look at myself and be like, okay, what am I doing wrong in this matchup? Or a 200 rating ago when I was versus Rogue Mage, like they left a gap. Now they don't leave a gap, and what I was doing doesn't work there, right? I think that just the process of queuing up will give you that. Like if you queue up over and over again, eventually you're going to find where you are, and you're going to start to go 50-50, and then that's where you're going to plateau. And I think something that really resonated with me a while ago is that Hansel had a pinned tweet a while ago. I don't remember when, but it looked almost like a graph, and like getting better at the game where like most of the time you're actually at a plateau. And that's just something that you have to deal with as a player, is like understanding that it's a time commitment, right? If you want to get Gladiator, if you want to get Duelist, whatever rating that you need, like you need as much time as you need to get there, if that makes any sense. And the plateau, you can break it quicker by doing what we talked about before, with doing VOD reviews or like maybe wargaming certain matchups, or watching other people, this kind of thing. But like you're gonna hit a plateau, and you're gonna like have to go back and fix mistakes from before. And sometimes too, don't get discouraged like if you go down rating. Like a week ago, for example, or like earlier in the season, I was number 1 and number 2 DH, right? On the ladder. And then I dropped out of that and I went out of rank 1 range. And for like 2 weeks, I was out of rank 1 range. And then I got back into rank 1 range very, very recently. So, you're definitely just going to go up and down, but it's all about the upwards trajectory, kind of like season to season rather than week to week or day to day when you're queuing for sure.
That's awesome. And just, this is kind of a memey question, but I have to ask, at what point did you ever blame other people's gear? Like, did you ever, like, you and your teammates be like, oh, the reason why we lost is because they're better than us, or they had better gear or whatever? Or was there a point where that wasn't the reason, and you moved on to, looking at the gameplay, looking at the what you did?
Yeah, I can totally see how a new player can look at that and be like, this gear is unfair, and I hate that for them so much. Like, I could go on a rant right now about how I feel like gear shouldn't be in arena, and I know it may not be a popular opinion, but like for newer players, I hate the fact that like I go into an arena, for example, and because I'm duelist or whatever, I have better gear than them. And for me, and I don't want to downplay anyone if you're stuck in 1400, 1600. Like for me, right when I started Demon Hunter, I was 2100, and that's not the same for everybody, right? Because I played in MoB and I was already a gladiator player, and then I quit the game and I came back in BFA, right? But that's not going to be the same journey for everyone. I understand that too. As someone that streams, like I look at my chat and be like, okay, this person's stuck at this rating, and I didn't need to deal with that, but I can still empathize with them, and I don't want to downplay their situation too. And I think that it is hard, like, for a newer player to blame the gear. And I think the only thing that I could say with that is, to these people, is it matters a lot less than you think, right? Because if I were able to like go on your 1400 account, obviously I would be able to get 2100, right? Or any top rated player would be able to do that. It's just going to be harder for you. And I think that's just something you have to deal with. Like that's just the state of the game. That's World of Warcraft Arena, and that's playing like an MMO. It's not playing like a League of Legends, for example, when you go in and everyone's on an equal playing field, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Exactly. Yeah, because I know in my like iterative process that has been very stressful. At least with the people that I played with, and it's the reason these people don't play the game anymore. So it's like, oh yeah, so we would always struggle with this idea that like, we're going to do the script, even if somebody messes up. So like, there's no recourse. It's just do the script, no matter what. And I'm kind of curious to hear what your thoughts are. Like, we were playing Rogue Mage, right? And it would be like if we put a kidney out, and there's no sheep, like don't blow anything, like just wash. And I even had a teammate who would sometimes just be like, okay, you know what, we're just gonna leave this match and come and just queue the next one because we missed our setup. So I'm kind of curious to hear what your thoughts are on like how much is it worth like salvaging the script. Is it not worth salvaging the script? Are we on point there? And maybe that's just what you got to do to tough it out to where you get it's worth the heartache to be able to. It's a justifiable means to an end. Meaning like the end is worth the means, if that makes sense.
I think about talking like it's entirely comp dependent if the game is over, so to say, if you don't stick to the script. Like for you playing Rogue Mage, I don't know if you play Rogue or Mage, but yeah, if you go off the script.
I play the Holy Paladin.
Oh, okay. I understand. Yeah, for sure. It could be, justifiable to leave the game at that point because, your setups are very important. I don't know if you like miss a setup at a very important point, or if you're playing like Rogue Mage in 2v2, if you mess up at a certain point, you do just lose the game. And, versus top-rated players, for example, I remember playing versus my good friend Jason. His name is Hot Jacob Purge. And when you play versus him in Arena, these players, they understand kill windows. So I remember just like one game in particular that stands out to me is we were like 2 minutes into the game, and I had to use Netherwalk, and my teammate, who's better than me, called out, okay, this game is over. Yeah. Right? Because in that moment he knew, but I died 2 minutes later. Right, but he already understood. It's like there's nothing that I can trade for that cooldown at that point. Like the game is over, right? And at that point, you're hoping for them to make a mistake. And not every player is perfect. And obviously they can make a mistake, but it's also like when you're versing the higher rate play, that's what makes them so scary, is like they're going to take that kill window. But if you're playing it like Gladiator, like Duelist, for example, you should definitely like stay in the game because you can outplay it for sure. You know, that's my opinion.
Okay.
I was just to add to this. This is the one thing that really, really bothers me sometimes when I watch streams or when I play. Is some people have that attitude. Oh, it's like, oh, the game is over. Oh, we double trinketed. We have nothing for next go. It's over. I really don't like that mentality. And like, I'm a play to, like, keep swinging until I die. I like the sort of optimistic approach to the game. And I think if you are like a player who's gets anxious or someone who's just trying to grind, like don't give up. There's really no reason to. You might feel like you've made a billion mistakes that game, but just keep playing it out. It's
exactly.
There might be some freaky thing could happen. You could win. I've had games where it's like everyone on the team's been at 1%, but it's like we come back by some miracle. And I just really get bothered when you blind someone's trinket or whatever and they leave the game. They just assume it's over. It's like, come on, bro. Like, play this one out.
Yeah, it would frustrate the heck out of me because I was the Holy Paladin. And so, like, and he was the Rogue. So it's like, his mage would miss something and it'd just be like, okay, we lost our window. It's over. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm trading great. Like, I can keep us going. Just, like, take the next window, And it's just, no, I'm done. It's just like, bro.
It's frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, okay, that sounds good. What do you think about the whole idea of like salvaging, meaning like go off script? So, like, let's say you're a lower rated player and you are I'm trying to think of a good example here. Maybe you are playing that rogue mage option, right? And you're the mage, and you're getting a triple CC on your combustion. Let's say that's your script, right? Let's just say it's not happening. Is it worth just going off script and maybe saying like, okay, I'm gonna combust here because we got to get something going, or like, I can't wait for my mage anymore. I'm just kidding. Like, are those bad? Like, are those traps, or are those like maybe sometimes doing what you got to do?
I would say they're most of the time traps. Okay. And that's something that I'm trying to learn in my gameplay too. It's like, okay, I have a stun available, but I don't have a cross for the enemy healer. And I play Demon Hunter, right? And it's not like I play this like, we don't kill 100 to 0, but it's still incredibly important for me. And that's just a basic fundamental thing in 3v3 is crossing your goes. Like every comp, no matter what comp you play, you have a so-called go. And if you don't cover it correctly, you're not going to get maximum value out of it. So even if you're playing like a rot comp, for example, you still want to land that go, right, to establish some pressure in that moment. So for me, like it takes a lot of discipline for you to be like, okay, I have kidney available, but I know I don't have a sheep DR on the healer, so I can't even sheep him, or I can't, like, you know what I mean? Like you have to wait in that situation, and that's very important to do for sure, regardless of the comp you're playing, is to understand your win conditions.
I will say this because I recently made a video about this. I agree. I think in perfect situations you should try to stay to the script, but sometimes that can be to your disadvantage. Like sometimes because of the way dampening works, sometimes you have win conditions that are outside of your script. And with how powerful cooldowns are right now and damages in general, sometimes in some situations, specifically ones with like high dampening, it's okay to just press go without an optimal setup, because that can just win you the game. Like sometimes people get really too focused on the setup that they fail to realize these other win conditions. So I think it's a bit of a balance. Like, in normal cases, play the script, but sometimes you should be willing to deviate from that. Like if it's high dampening, because then you can do things slightly different. Or if you just have enough damage, like if you all have your cooldowns, you can just press go even without CC on the healer, and sometimes that's enough to score kills. There's been tournament games like, I can pull up a million different AWC games where this has happened. And so it's a careful dance, I think, between scripted and sort of free flow gameplay.
Yeah. And something to talk about that, like for sure is like understanding your class, right? And I think I'm a really good example of this. Is like I'm a demon hunter, right? You don't always need to cross the healer to kill for sure. You could just like press the hunt
Yep.
Yep.
sometimes, but even when I'm pressing the hunt, I'm still setting my hunt up, right? Like I'm always going to be stunning, and I really try not to hunt unless I know, for example, like this hunter doesn't have feign death, or he doesn't have turtle, or this priest doesn't have fade and he doesn't have disperse. Like that in my head is still like kind of like sticking to a script, knowing that like, okay, I'm not gonna like hunt here and like hunt into fade. You know what I mean? Like I'm setting my cooldowns. The healer is not CC, but I can still land a kill because he's 20%. But I'm still making sure that I'm doing it at a right time. And I think that that's just like understanding your class for sure.
Yeah, that's. I think that's incredibly insightful, and that's one of those things that is like playing on DPS characters and stuff like that. I almost kind of think of it as like a this is somewhat of a nerd kind of tangent here, but it's almost, if you've ever done anything with like electrical work, they have like they'll have like no-go gates and stuff like that. And it's almost like you need all the switches kind of closed for the light to illuminate. And then once all the conditions have been met, so to speak, and that light illuminates, it's like, okay, I'm ready to go. And that's kind of how like my brain kind of compartmentalizes it. But I think, yeah, those are incredibly insightful, and I think that's I think that'd be really helpful for anyone who's trying to get into the arena scene. Maybe you're sticking tons of hours and you're just throwing your efforts up at the wall with whoever you can, or maybe you have an established group, and you're just, maybe things are aren't so hot, or maybe things are doing pretty well, but it's kind of going off on a side twist here. And so thanks for those answers. I think we probably want to talk about a Gerissar, are you ready, or did you have anything?
Nope. No, I think this has been an amazing conversation.
Okay.
I've been sitting back and just kind of pondering about my own gameplay now. Just kind of, I do appreciate it. But I think we should go on to the most important question of them all.
Please
and
do the honors.
All right. Okay. So we always do this. We always say it's the one thing you would change. So the scenario being, Seany, Ian Hazzikostas, he calls you up and he's like, I'm going to give you one thing you can change about the stress of PvP, the anxiety of PvP. You can change. Doesn't matter, realistic, unrealistic, money, not an issue. Just if there's one thing that you could change about the system in World of Warcraft, what would it be? And it'll happen. So.
Can I start with this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all you.
Yeah, so for me, it wouldn't really, and I think this podcast is a great example of it for what I'm about to say, but it wouldn't really be a system in a game. It would more be like a mentality in a lot of players, and like us as a community understanding that, this game can be anxiety provoking to play for sure, and not to downplay it at all. Like, I think that's why on my stream, I like to create a safe place for people to ask questions, and, for people to voice their concerns, or like say, okay, this is hard, right? I hate that. I think something that gets thrown around a lot in our community too much is like, it's just so easy. Just why didn't you do this?
Easy game,
or yeah, like I don't really like that so much, especially because of what I deal with on a day-to-day basis, and like my OCD and my anxiety, that like I understand this, and if someone were to ask me, like just being truthful and not trying to like hide that, and yeah, so like just overall, in my opinion, just like us as a community, just coming together and be like, okay, like it's okay to be anxious, or it's okay to be scared in this situation, or this game isn't easy for everybody, right? This game is very hard for some people, and like that's okay too, right? And I don't want to like take away from what they're doing by saying it's easy,
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it. All right. Andallyn, is there anything you change?
Pretty bad guilds. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go there. Let's see. I think the one thing that I would change is I think I've used this one way back in the past, but I think it's worth resurrecting because it fits so well into today's topic. I would love the ability, kind of like what Overwatch has, for you to be able to go back and watch your arena match in the game client. I think it would be so valuable and it'd be so helpful, and it would actually incentivize a lot of that VOD review, and almost kind of it bridges the gap and kind of helps guide your content creators to say, here's an easy piece of content that's going to benefit you, our community, your community, and everyone else who's playing the game. So I think that'd be really awesome. Super, super awesome thing to see. So I would love to see it. That's the one thing I would change.
I like it. Big. Do you got one?
Yes, I'm teasing my upcoming video, but I really think that gear is a massive part of a lot of players' anxieties in World of Warcraft right now, specifically for PvP. And I really think it should be the last thing people worry about. Yeah. So I think like a complete overhaul to the gearing system in a way that still preserves the MMO element, but at the same time makes the game more competitive and fair. I think that would be the number one thing that would make the game better and more accessible to a wider player base.
I like it. I'm gonna say I would like for there to be a coaching sphere. So you know how there's like obviously there's the arenas that are on the competitive ladder. There's skirmishes which are kind of fun to screw around in, but it's so ad hoc. I wish that there was a way for me to be able to queue up with a person and do a coaching. So like be up against let's say queue up for 2v2 where the opponents are very smart AIs, computer generate, and be with somebody and be like, okay, and then be able to go through that and remove some of that anxiety, remove some of that that stress, and put it into a good training environment where I could actually get coaching and learn without all that other stress and anxiety on the fly.
A training mode, basically.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah,
that's not bad.
But then it would also allow for things like Shawnee or Big or Peekaboo or anybody else, if they want to do coaching and actually do real coaching, then they're doing that and not basically doing carries at the same time. So
quote unquote coaching.
Yeah. Self-play coaching, right?
Yeah. So Big, I'm excited to see your video, and I don't want to try to like extrapolate anything out of it, but I'm kind of curious to hear, as a sidebar, what are your thoughts on if Blizzard decided to split up the arena ladder to where they had two ladders? One would be like instanced, meaning it was with it was like gear was irrelevant, meaning everyone was on the same playing field, like League of Legends style, so to speak. Yeah. And then the other end was like open world arena, meaning it was your gear mattered. Your gear actually plays its full MMO style. What would your thoughts be on that, or do we just have to watch your video?
So, well, actually, I answered I kind of described this on the last podcast, but I know you weren't there, so I'll describe it again. In a perfect world, there is a server called Tournament Realm that can queue into any other server.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to, you can play your character on a normal realm, where you do the leveling, the renown grinding, whatever, or you can just make a template character on the Tournament Realm, and you have access to full renown, full gear, any gear you want in the game, and you can queue into the people who are on the normal servers. That way, the people who want to grind their character, they can do it, albeit they're going to be at a disadvantage sometime. But the people who don't care about that, now they have their own server they can play on, and they can queue into the people who want to have the authentic MMO experience. I think that is the most happy medium. Okay, you want your MMO experience? Fine. I want my gear, So I think that, for me, that's an ideal system. No way that's ever going to happen, but for me, that's ideal.
See, I see the two separate systems as being more so ideal because by doing that, the MMO experience is inherently disincentivized. That's not ideal. I would not call that ideal. Because
what do you mean? You can play the MMO experience if you want. You know?
Well, an MMO experience is not in any way equivalent to a bunch of people in the world are just influxed with all the powers and the gear, quote unquote, that you would normally in an MMO world like go have. You right? So it's kind of like if a bunch of players put in a cheat code in MMO, it ruins the MMO experience because that's not what the MMO experience is. So like you're inherently cheapening. In fact, in this case, you're drastically cheapening what the MMO experience would be, right?
Well, then you could just go play the MMO, you know? So I think giving players the option and I think presenting them with player choice is important because I think right now there's a tension. There's a tension between players who want that authentic MMO experience you're describing and players who don't care about that whatsoever and just want to press play. So I think...
What's the downside then to having the two separate ladders because you're saying combine the ladders and allow them to both coexist within the same unit. What about isolating the two ladders and having just a separate rating for this and a separate rating for that?
It'd just be queue times, The queue times would be way too long. So I think that's why you would need the crossover.
Okay.
All right.
Fair enough.
Let's get into the news.
Let's do it.
All right.
Okay. Millhouse was only halfway there. I don't know. These sounders, man. We got to fix them. So.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys could hear him.
Millhouse, what are we paying you for? Goodness gracious.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see here. What's been going on? Andallyn, did you check out any of the events that happened in the last couple weeks when you got back?
No, but I did hear you tease that Flark hosted another one of his 3v3 tournaments. I know we're waiting in the weeds right now to kind of figure out what his plan is going into the future on if he's going to continue doing those, maybe what's frequency, who knows? We'll figure it out. But he did host one just recently on the 11th of September. The prize pool was $600, which is awesome. And a huge congratulations to Wise, FootGodX, and Barn Door, the OG, for winning. So congratulations to you guys. Excellent job. You can kind of check out what the full standings was over at their challenge link, which we'll have for you available in the show notes.
Indeed. I do want to point out, I think that's the second time Barndoor's actually competed. The last time he competed he got knocked out in like the first round. So he just happened to... Yeah. Again, though, they were talking about it's just the roll of the dice of the comp, right? It's sometimes you end up with a couple players and the team just doesn't jive, and sometimes it works out, right? So
yeah. So let's see, Big. Did you catch any of the Oasis stuff? Tell us about that.
I didn't have a chance to watch it, but congratulations to we have the best character. We have the best names of tournament winners.
We do.
We just had Foot God X, and now we have Heckin Doggo and Sok Choi, who won the Oasis 2v2. If I was there, if I was a tournament admin, I would have let them win just based on their names.
There were some great names in that tournament.
But yeah, it looks like it's best of three, single elimination, and so.
I like how his name is spelled Sok Choi, S-O-K. He tried to type S-O-C-K first. It's like, Sock's already taken. What about S-O-K?
But yes, and if you guys want to join the Oasis community, they have a Discord server. I'm sure we're going to have links to that in our show notes afterwards. But it's a community that I think if you really want to feel like you're part of an actual player base, not swimming out there in in the ocean waters alone, I think it's a good place to start.
It's
You know, it is an
authentic.
oasis. Yes, it's an oasis for all those who like to PvP, and that includes RPGs and Arena. So good on them for hosting that tournament.
Indeed. I do want to point out again, so for this one, it was people that just signed up regardless of their rating, and then they're just paired with people. So the neat one here is Heck and Doggo actually has some experience arenaing, but Sok Choi doesn't. In fact, actually, he was strictly a PvEer. They did a few skirmishes and war games right before the tournament for like 20 minutes or something like that.
That's awesome.
And Sok Choi was I think he was a disc priest, holy priest or disc priest. Anyways, but yeah, if you actually watch the VOD, you can actually see the consistent improvement every game. It was really amazing. So
That's cool.
but yeah, it was amazing. Hot fixes as always. They came through. Nothing jumped out at me PvP wise. Really, nothing seemed very huge. There's I guess the real big one that everybody was talking about was the hot fix where they changed the regeneration rate of your conduit energy from 1 per day to 10 per day. And this is just until we get to 9.1.5, where they're actually going to get rid of it. Conduit energy, they hotfix that so that players would be able to not feel punished in the meantime.
Yeah.
So other than that, I think that's about it really for PvP fixes since the last time we talked. And then, of course, everybody's got their eyes on 9.1.5 because there is a huge amount of changes that are coming down the pipe. Class development, class changes, and everything else. So I don't know about you guys. I'm expecting that the meta is going to change a little bit. I'm not going to say significantly, but I could definitely foresee some changes there. And then following up as well, there was a developer update that was given out today, just again recapping a little bit of what they've done and how they're listening to the community, and this was nice because at least they're communicating back to us. It wasn't a one and done. It seems to be something that's happening a bit more regularly with this one, 9.1.5. But it's actually, I think, big. We failed to really talk about this. We're focusing on all the other stuff that they're talking about for retail. We forgot to talk that Burning Crusade Classic, the season ended and season 2 started today, eh? I don't think we really talked about that much.
Wow.
Yeah.
You guys really needed me back. Jeez.
Oh yeah, it was horrible. No, I think we kind of glazed over or skipped over most of the Burning Crusade stuff. So yeah, season 2 started today for the PvP season there. So congratulations to all the people that got their rank ones. And I think they're doing team play. So again, if you want to have that experience we were talking about earlier, you can go there and try that. And tomorrow, I believe it's at 1 p.m. Pacific time. 1 or 3. I forgot to to write that down. But the Serpent Shrine Cavern and Eye Raids are going to open tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other things, I grabbed these few items. I don't know if anybody had a chance to get on at the PTR or not. I still haven't had a chance to really do that. But I know Lika got on there and was doing a few items. So in 9.1.5, this is what they're looking at for doing at least on the PTR right now. So if you're going to make a group in LFG, when players sign up to your arena group or your PvP group, their CR is going to show. So you're going to see what their actual CR of their character is. So, they can't fluff it and say that they're a 2K rating when they're signing up to your 1800 group, right? When they only have 600. So there's doing that. You can't create any groups above your actual CR, if I remember that correctly. And what was the other one? So if you are the leader in LFG for your group, you can actually continue to peruse the rest of
That's a nice
LFG.
change.
Yeah. So you're not sit there just hoping people find
Yeah.
you and join you. You can keep
Right.
looking around for other people as well.
while you're waiting for your group to fill. If it does, yeah, that's good.
Exactly.
Smart. Yeah,
Well,
because that's the biggest user error with LFG. The hands down the biggest user error with LFG is people go in there and 9 times out of 10, if they're on Facebook in the World of Warcraft group complaining, LFG is so terrible. Look at this screenshot from this terrible person who said this to me, or I got denied over and over again. Everything can be fixed by just hitting the create group button.
Yep.
User error. Press create group button.
Well, I think a lot of people don't want to create groups because they think that just because they created the group, they then have to lead it. I don't know. What do you guys
If it's
think
an arena, that's not really a group you're leading. So
Sure, but what about for RPGs? Is it inherently assumed that if a person is creating the group in LFG that they're going to lead the actual RPG? Shawnee? Big?
I mean, yeah, for sure. Like, if you have the crown in an RPG group, at least in my experience, like the person with the crown is the leader.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. Yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's understandable, and that's totally natural. RPGs is a completely different story because it's rated battlegrounds. I mean, unless you put in there that you're trying to do a YOLO group, which people pretty much understand what that is. That's not really catching anybody off guard. You're not gonna be like, "Oh, what did I sign up for, man?" You're not gonna get all upset about joining a YOLO group. If you do, you're just I mean, sorry, bro, you just learned. But there's a certain expectation for that, and honestly, like it doesn't even have to be like something that you do over voice. It could just be like, all you got to do is just take a step. You've seen people lead RPG groups before. Like, just take that step. Take the step. If you're serious about pushing rating, this is not going to be an issue for you.
I guess that's the one anxiety thing we never talked about.
Yeah, it's true. That's true.
The anxiety of leading your own group.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, like I said, this at least will alleviate that. And so you can create a group, and if people join you, great. And at the same time, if you're fear of missing out, fear of missing the other good group that you think you'd fit into, you can still keep looking, which is, like I said, I think it's a good thing. I can't wait for 915 to drop. Get to play with all these things. All right. I think that's about it for the news. Let's roll this out. We're going to start with Shawnee, though. Do you have any shout-outs you want to give?
No, not particularly. I don't.
All right.
No.
All right. Andallyn, how about you?
Oh, gee, I don't want to ruin or spoil anything, so I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, not today. next week.
You guys are killing me. You're killing me. Okay. Big.
Yes, I'm gonna give the same shout out I gave last week. I'm gonna shout out my my long time, good time, and I guess long time arena partner, Jax. He's
All right.
just been a homie for many years. I always appreciate playing with him. And
That's awesome.
Shout out to Jax.
You gotta have
you
those
guys
players, man. You gotta have those players that you love queuing with.
Indeed.
Yes.
All right. Well, I guess I'll have to do the shout out to the Patreons that are continuing to help support Warcraft Radio, and by extension then supporting us. So thank you everybody for doing that. And if you are curious about that, you'll have to listen to the outro to find out how you can also support. But before we get into our little spiel, I'm going to give Shawnee one last chance. Here's your chance. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Sure. You can find me at SeaneyDH on Twitch. I am live every single day at 11 p.m. EST. You can feel free to message me on my Discord. You can just go to my Twitch channel, put !Discord. Then you can also follow my Twitter, which is also, I believe it's SeaneyDH Twitch on my Twitter. I think I'm just checking that right now. I'm new to Twitter. So yeah, it's SeaneyDH Twitch on Twitter. And yeah, if you could follow me there, that'd be great.
Awesome. I know we're following you, so Looking
I
forward
appreciate
to
that. Thank you.
Our pleasure. And oh shoot, okay, carry on. Andallyn, why don't you list off where our listeners can reach us?
Sure. You can contact us directly with a tweet to @technically_PvP or with an email to technicallypvp@gmail.com. You can also join our discussions on the Warcraft Radio Discord, specifically in that Technically PvP Discord chat channel. We'd love to chat with you there.
Also, you can visit the Warcraft Radio website to find the podcast directory with us and many other great shows at warcraftradio.com. This new directory also has a review system, so head over there and tell everyone what you think of your favorite shows.
Indeed. And as always, link for these and everything else are going to be in the show notes. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk with you next time. Good night, everybody.
Take care.